Hey everyone, Skeletor here from Paladin Discord, and today we're going to go over some Warcraft logs, or how I go over Warcraft logs myself. Want to help someone out. I know Theet just happened to make a video on this as well, so he kind of beat me to the punch a bit. So definitely go ahead and give his video a watch if you have not. I'll put a link down there in the comment box. But I do things a little bit differently, so I figured I'd still go ahead and make this video here. I did delay this video a bit because I've been playing WoW a lot. I really wanted to get my 54 traits in my weapon, which I finally did. So I do have a few videos here that I would like to make, and if you have any suggestions as well, definitely let me know and I'll see what I can do. So we have here a log for a Ret Paladin. This log was given to us by Paladin in the Ret Discord server. It is a mythic Ursoc kill that he was kind enough to provide for us to go over and see what we can do to help him. So I already have the log pulled up here. We're just on the damage done page. And the first thing we see here is when I look at the overall raid DPS here. We had some people in the 400s, most people 300 plus, some below. So not a super fast kill time. It was 4 minutes 18 seconds. But not a horrible kill time for a Ret Paladin. That 4 minute 18 second kill time does get you at least partway through your third crusade. If the fight ended at 4 minutes, that would have been very bad. Ideally for a Ret Paladin, your fight will end in under a minute. About 2.5 minutes, 4.5 minutes. When you end fights on numbers like 4 minutes exactly, that's your lowest possible DPS point. So if your fight ends at 4 minutes, you kind of got screwed a bit. But that's neither here nor there for this video. But alright, so here we got Paladin. He did 368,443.1 DPS. And he felt like it was a bit low and wanted to know what we can do here to improve. So first thing I'll see here is, as of this video, we still are on patch 7.1. For at least another week. So Blessing of Might is still part of our damage kit, which will thankfully be going away in patch 7.1.5. But for now, the first thing I do when I open a log is I look at the top 3 DPS. So here we have a Shadow Priest, a Feral Druid, and an Assassination Rogue. So those are the top 3 targets for Blessing of Might, just as a mental note. We'll get to that later. So what we'll go ahead and do here is we'll zoom in on Paladin. Alright, so we're zoomed in a bit here. This is the initial page that we'll get. Before we get in this though, we'll go to the summary. The summary gives us a bit of information about his talent setup and gear he's using. So we see here he's using Final Verdict, Seal, Blade of Wrath, Crusade. Pretty standard across the board. Only has 28 points in the artifact. Definitely a little bit behind there. 35 plus is ideal. That 5% damage boost is very nice. And we can also see some of the gear here. I really hate this view though, so what I also do is I go to WoW Progress, like right here, and on WoW Progress, I bring up this as well. So again, 28 traits, still the same amount. It shows the sim DPS from WoW Progress, but that's not the best measure because, as you can see, there is a 450-second combat time. But we can see here the gear. He's got the 2-piece Nightborn set. It's a nice set to have. He has a legendary cape there, definitely a good one. His Ashbringer is 889. He does have 3 relics that are for Avenging Wrath. For trinkets, we got Eye of Command and Swarming Plague Hive. As a note here, in 7.1.5, you will definitely want to replace this. Because Blessing of Might is going away, we will not be able to proc Swarming Plague Hive as much, and its value goes through the floor. So if you already have a stat stick or another trinket, that's good. But one thing I noticed here, you don't have a used trinket, you'll definitely want one of those. Currently, the top 2 used trinkets are Faulty Countermeasure from Vault of the Wardens, or Horn of Valor from the Halls of Valor. Either of those are very good. So if you have one, it's definitely really nice to line up with Crusade. currently. So that's just a little bit of a gear overview. Let's head back to the log here. We'll go back to damage done. So first thing we'll do here from this damage done page, we see that he had 48 casts of Templar's Verdict. Sometimes you might see it won't show a number of casts, it'll show a dash like this. If you ever see a case where the number is missing, click on the skill name itself, and then it will show you the proper number of casts. So in this one here, we have 48 casts of Templar's Verdict. We'll just go back here. An important thing for Rep Paladins, we want to make sure when we use Templar's Verdict that our target has the Judgment debuff. Judgment applies that 9-second debuff to the target that increases the damage of our spenders. And an easy way to do that here is we have this target aura filter section here. And we have a few options, and the option we want to use is Judgment. By default, this is turned off, so these are just all your cast. If you click on the Judgment icon one time, this will show you the total number of casts that were inside that Judgment debuff window. So we see here it was 48 casts, so every single one of his Templar Verdicts was used during Judgment debuff, which is very good. You definitely want to do that. You don't want to have more than 1 or 2 missed outside of the window, especially on a single target fight, or mostly single target fight like Ursoc here. If you click the aura one more time, it turns to a red outline. The red is the number of casts that were not in the Judgment window. So we can see here Templar's Verdict is not there, and also Divine Storm, because there is some cleave options here on Mythic Ursoc. They were all used inside the Judgment debuff, which is very good. And click it one more time and it goes away. One thing here as well, he does have the legendary cape. So on the left hand side here, you can track some different buffs. Now we'll go for the cape buff here, which is Whisper of the Nazarethim. We'll click on that. We'll see we had 29 of Templar's Verdicts were inside the cape. He had 48 total. Click it again, goes red, so 19 were outside. But you're not going to have every cast inside Templar's Verdict. The more haste you have, the easier it is to have more inside. So, off to start here, pretty good. We got all of our TVs inside the Judge window. Next thing that I'll do here is I'll go to our Resources tab, and we'll check Holy Power. When you first come here, it's on hit points. Change hit points to Holy Power. And it will show us how much Holy Power we gained or wasted on a fight. So from Zeal, 70 gained, 0 wasted, very good. Blade of Justice, 62 gained, 0 wasted, really good. Your builders like this, Zeal and Blade, this should always be 0 for wasted. I know if you get the Legendary Ring, it can be a bit awkward at first, the timing's a bit off. You have to get used to that. But outside of that, if you don't have a ring, which in this case he doesn't, for everyone else as well, if you don't have a ring, you should have 0 wasted Holy Power from Zeal or Blade of Justice. Not last here, but we have Wake of Ashes, which when we have our Ashes to Ashes talent, Wake of Ashes gives us 5 Holy Power right away. And during combat, you're always going to run into a case where you waste some Holy Power. So in this case here, he wasted 4 Holy Power, which isn't a big deal. We know that Wake of Ashes is a 30-second cooldown, so we'll use this little chart here. First cast of the fight, 5 Holy Power, none are wasted. Go to 30 seconds, we see he just cast Templar Verdict, then uses Wake of Ashes, so no waste there. We'll jump to about a minute, and we see here he gets 1 Holy Power from Zeal, but then he uses a Wake of Ashes to get his Holy Power, so that's where he lost 1. Again, not a huge deal, it'll happen throughout the fight. The important thing to check here is to make sure you only waste 1. In very, very rare cases, it might be beneficial to use Wake of Ashes on 2, but ideally only 1. And if we just go through here, just go through the humps, we know these big humps are from Wake of Ashes because it's the instant 5. And if there's a little peak beneath it, we know there was more holy power there. If it was a Blade of Justice, it would have been 2, and this would have been a little bit higher up. So that's one thing we check. We make sure we're not wasting more than 1 holy power on Wake of Ashes. And also Arcane Torrent, because he has a Blood Elf. Generally, you'll use Arcane Torrent when it's off cooldown and you're not HP capped. So as far as resources go, very good here. Let's go back to damage done for now for a few other things to investigate here. Remember earlier for Might, we noticed that the top targets were a Shadow Priest, Feral Druid, and Assassination Rogue, so they would be the top 3 Might targets. But as I mentioned earlier, he does have Swarming Plague Hive here. And when you have Swarming Plague Hive, you do want to Might yourself. So if you look at his Might damage here, he put Might on the Shadow Priest, the Assassination Rogue, and himself, which was the right choice. You always want to have your Might on the top 3 DPS while it lasts. If you are one of the top 3 DPS, that has to not include Might damage. If you are top 3 without your Might damage, then you would Might yourself. If you are not top 3 without Might damage, you would Might those top 3. And again, if you have a Plague Hive, you would Might yourself. Plus the 2 top. Or who you think will be top at least. Alright, we see here we have a Potion of Old War. It looks like the Potion of Old War didn't do too much damage there. So it might only have 1 use of that. We'll check on that here in a moment. So Wake of Ashes here. We see that there was 8 casts of Wake of Ashes. On a fight that's 4 minutes and 18 seconds, we can get 2 wakes per minute. And this fight went a little bit past 4, so we could have had 9 wakes here at the start of the fight, at 30 seconds, at 1 minute, at 1 minute 30, 2 minutes, 2:30, 3:30, and at 4. So we could have had 9 there, so I missed 1 wake. Definitely want to make sure we don't delay that too much to make sure we can use it as much as possible. We also noted he had the Eye of Command trinket. With the Eye of Command trinket, you always want to make sure you are meleeing only 1 target. If you are meleeing an extra target with your auto attacks, that will reset your stacks. So if we check his melee here, we see he only targeted Ursoc. So he never auto attacked the ad, which is the right thing to do. He never auto attacked the Nightmare Images, which is the right thing to do. He stayed on Ursoc the entire time to keep his trinket up. That's very good. So looking pretty good here. Next section we'll go to the buffs section. So the buffs section will give us a general overview here of what was going on. One thing we see here right away is that there was that Potion of Old War that was used at the start. So only 1 pot was used. It was a pre-pot, so the second pot was missed. Potting twice is definitely optimal for your damage. Usually you have your pre-pull, and then you'll use your second pot during Crusade, or during Crusade plus Bloodlust. If you have to choose an either or, always use it during Crusade. You have more haste during Crusade, and you'll get more Old War procs. So we see here he had food buff, that's good. Whispers of the Nazarethim, cape buff there, so 72%. He has the 2-piece Nightborn, which we noted. He got pretty unlucky here at the start of the fight. He had no procs for his first Crusade, which kind of sucks. But it did have a pretty high uptime overall. It was there for his second Crusade, and it was there for the beginning of his last Crusade as well. That's alright. We see here Bloodlust was not used on pull in his strategy. It was used later in the fight. On Ursoc, especially once you've killed it a few times, you can definitely start to Bloodlust at the start. So if you have any sway with the raid leader, definitely might want to suggest that. And also the Almighty Retribution. So Retribution we get when someone dies within 40 yards. We see here he only had that for a small amount of time at the end of the fight. So really irrelevant there, didn't gain anything from that. Alright, on Ursoc you can be charged. If you do get targeted for a charge, that will lower your damage. So we'll go to debuffs here. And for debuffs here, Focus Gaze is the charge. Only happened one time, and it was near the end of the fight there. We'll take a bit more deep dive in a moment. But pretty good. Only getting one charge is good. 0 is ideal, 1 is okay. Getting more than 1, it's not very fun. Not good for your DPS. So the next thing we want to break down here is the actual, what is he casting? So we'll switch our view here to the casts. We're on tables by default, which isn't very useful, but we can switch to timelines, and this will show us in what order skills were casted. So a big part of our Rep Paladins is our burst, or the biggest part of Rep Paladin is our burst, by far. We do our most damage during Crusade, so we want to make sure we maximize that Crusade damage. And right away here, we can see at the start of the fight, there was no activity until 2 seconds into the fight, where it went Wake of Ashes and then Judgment and Crusade at the same time. And then continued on there. So openers for Rep Paladin is kind of contended. I did have a video I made just the other day, or this morning, depending what time this video comes out. So definitely take a moment to watch that video. I put some simulation profiles up there to see what openers sim best for your character. But I went ahead and did that already here, so let me open up SimCraft and we'll go over the results. Alright, we got SimCraft here. I simmed 2 different profiles, one using Zeal and one using the Fires of Justice. And also, on this simulation, because his Ursoc kill was 4 minutes 18 seconds, which is right around 258 seconds, I did set the fight length to 258 seconds. So in a really good scenario, a good execution of Ursoc, you could definitely be pushing 500,000 DPS. And we see here the openers. So the best opener here for your character would be Prejudgment, Crusade, and Wake. And if you're not too sure what Prejudgment is, that's when you cast Judgment during the countdown timer. So your raid leader should be doing countdown timer, either 10 seconds, 12, whatever, however long it is. And the way that it usually works is at 1 second on the countdown timer, unless you have to move, you'll have to move later. On fights you have to run to the boss a small distance, you'll want to cast your Divine Steed. Right after your Divine Steed, you'll want to go ahead and use your pre-pot, preferably Old War. And then once there's about half a second on the timer, you'll want to go ahead and press Judgment. Judgment is not an instant spell. The actual Judgment has a travel time. So if you cast Judgment at right about half a second or less, it will hit the boss once that timer reaches 0. You don't risk fooling the boss early as long as you press Judgment when there is a half a second or less. So that is ideal. You want to press Judgment when there's a half a second or less. In this case, you'll want to press Crusade first right away. He does have, remember, he has 3 Avenging Wrath relics, so he can fit 2 Wakes inside of his Crusade, so this is best for him. You'd press Crusade, and Crusade's off the global cooldown, so you can press it as soon as you're in range to use a Wake of Ashes. So Wake of Ashes is a 12-yard range. That's the same range as a Blade of Justice. So when you're walking in, as soon as you're in Blade of Justice range, that's when you go ahead and press Wake. So at this point, you got your Judgment debuff up, you got Crusade up, you got 5 Holy Power. First thing that you'll want to do there is go ahead and hit Templar's Verdict. You'll be down to 2 Holy Power. Your Blood Elf, you can press Arcane Torrent, you'll be at 3. Templar's Verdict again right away. The most important thing in Crusade is to spend Holy Power as fast as possible. The faster you spend it, the faster you build up your stacks. The more stacks you have, the more damage you do, the more haste you have, the more fluid the rotation is during that time. So you just want to keep spending as many Templar's Verdicts as possible to get the most out of that damage. I also simmed the Fires of Justice here. So the Fires of Justice did sim a little bit higher, but this is just a single target only fight. On Ursoc, there is a little bit of cleave there with the Nightmare ad, so Zeal could potentially bounce through that ad, and it might be closer. In a pure single target environment though, the Fires of Justice does sim about 2300 or so DPS higher. So if you want to switch talents on fights, you can definitely do that. But they are relatively close. It's not a huge difference. You can use whatever one feels best for you. On fights where there is cleave, Zeal will be better. On pure single target fights, you'll find that Fire of Justice is better. You also might like the fact that Fire of Justice has less downtime. Either or is fine. But that's enough Simcraft for now. We'll jump back to our Warcraft logs here. So what we have here is, again, Wake, he did Crusade and Judge at the same time. He did Templar's Verdict, then a Zeal, Templar's Verdict, built 3 Holy Power, Templar's Verdict, build 2, Judge, used Arcane Torrent, spent. But the biggest thing here is there is a lot of delay between these skills. So there's a lot of damage we're missing out on here. Because Wake wasn't used until 2 seconds, and we want to maximize that time during Crusade and on the boss in general. So we want to avoid large gaps like this, unless there's some sort of fight mechanic that's preventing us from doing so, like on a charge. But we know in this case there wasn't a charge until later in the fight. So there should be relatively small gaps here, not large gaps like this. So if we go through here, take a look. Again, building, pretty much always spending at 3. That's good. We want to spend at 3 as much as possible. It looks like Divine Sea was used here. It might have been for repositioning or something. It still was not charged yet. Usually we'd only use that for a charge. So there was some downtime there, about 23 seconds-ish to a little after 25, a few seconds downtime. We want to avoid as much downtime as possible during Crusade. This is a huge loss of damage. So make sure to stick on that target. We see here we got another large gap here. This is just all lost damage. This is part of the reason why you're not hitting as high as you could be. Have to get rid of the downtime as much as you can. Alright, around this point we're about 35 seconds in. So at this point Crusade would have ended. When Crusade is over, you want to focus more on building Holy Power. So if you have the option to build past 3 Holy Power, you want to do that. So if you have 3 Holy Power and your Blade of Justice is off a cooldown, you would want to press Blade of Justice to have 5. If you already have Judgment up, then you would go ahead and use your Templar's Verdict to spend. But if you have the opportunity to build Holy Power, that will generally be your best option. The only times in this case you would spend at 3 is if the Judgment debuff was about to fall off and you were about to lose your Cape debuff. If they were both about to fall off, you would be better off using a Templar's Verdict there to take advantage of both of those buffs. So again, we'll just scroll through here. Again, we're seeing these large gaps in skill casts. It might be some small movement during Ursoc, maybe some repositioning after he's charging. You definitely want to maximize, start running towards Ursoc if you can, just a little bit. Don't run across the map on a steed and chase him, but if you can follow him just a little bit in, a little bit out, just to maximize your damage, you'll want to. Remember, skills like Blade of Justice are range, so we can use that at range. It's a good skill to use. We see here it was 2 Templar's Verdicts were comboed in there. Again, if you have the option to build Holy Power, definitely something you'll want to do. But for the most part, is building to 5 here. Here we got a few Divine Storms. That's where the Nightmare image comes in on Ursoc. So you definitely want to use that. But again here, look at these large gaps of time. All these gaps are just potential damage. Now another case where you'll spend at 3 is if the Nightmare image is about to die. You'd be better off casting a Divine Storm to make sure it hits both targets before it dies, rather than build, just to squeeze out that little bit of extra damage there. Alright, going further here. Still large gaps of time here. We're still not at the point where that focus gaze happened, but still some large skill gaps there. And that is where the damage is really suffering. We'll just scroll a bit past here. Don't spend too long on this. And we'll scroll through here, and here's where we can see this is where the charge would happen. At this point, he would have had the focus gaze on him. He'd have to run out and run back in. So you will always lose damage there. And that happened near the end of the fight. And that was pretty much it. So the biggest thing here is there was lots of downtime in the rotation that could have been avoided. This wouldn't be a haste issue, this is more a positioning issue, or possibly being comfortable using your skills while moving. So that's definitely the biggest improvement point. The more often you can stay on the boss and cast your skills, the more damage you can do. And sometimes what I'll do, just to verify that this is what happened, I'll go to the replay here. I'll go ahead and target the person. We'll start the replay. I won't watch the whole thing, but I'll watch a little bit of it. We can see here his icon's a little bit larger. We can see when he's moving around. But we'll go to right around this range here. We'll see when he got charged. Let's jump ahead a bit. See here, he's got the marker on. He has to run out for the charge. Lost some damage from there, but that has to happen. It's a bit far away from the boss there. Not sure if he's quite in range. Looks like you might have run a bit far out to avoid being hit by the charge. You can stay pretty close to the boss during the charge. You just want to make sure you're not inside his hitbox. If you're inside the hitbox when he charges and you're not supposed to take a charge, that'll be very detrimental. You'll probably die or proc your bubble. One thing I noticed here, just a general tip, not just for him, but for his guild in general. It's pretty unorganized in Ursoc. On a fight like Ursoc, strategy is a very important factor. Usually what we'll see people do is they'll have two teams. We'll have a melee marker on a tank, and we'll have a range marker on a range. All the melee will stand in front of the boss, all the range and healers will stand on the side of the boss. And it'll be two groups split up, and you'll just switch the charges between the groups. That's something your guild might want to look into to see if that helps. Might make the Ursoc kills a bit easier and cleaner, and give everyone a bit more damage overall. And mentioned earlier as well, if you can lust at the start, that will definitely be an overall DPS gain. Alright, let me just go back here. I think I pretty much covered what I wanted to. Went over resources, went over buffs, debuffs, went over judgment. Yep, that was pretty much it. When I go over a log, this is the information that I look at to see what we can do to improve. So overall, not too bad. Definitely just the biggest issue here is cast efficiency, making sure you're sticking to the boss and casting as much as possible. Some of the great things here is that you were spending at 3 holy power during Crusade. Definitely do that. All of your Templar's verdicts were inside the Judgment debuff. That's very good. There is no wasted holy power on your spenders, which is all really good. So definitely have a solid base here. Just have to clean up a bit, and you'll definitely start pulling a lot better numbers. If you have any questions about this, just let me know. Thank you.